Good morning, y'all. I'm gonna share y'all something interesting, and I'm smiling now, but at the same time, this is a little bit sad in a way. It's something I learned about Martin Luther King, and it is February, so this is a month to talk about it. So I was doing some research on Martin Luther King because I was looking at a few things about him. I looked at the speech and I looked at a lot of different things, and this was not today. This was a few moments ago, like maybe last year. It's a few years ago. It wasn't last year, it was a few years ago. But the thing that I was learning as I was researching and looking at all of these different interviews about people who knew him and were very close to him, the interesting thing that I learned was that he was learning about things other than Christianity. Now, me saying this, I know that maybe if one of his family members heard this, they might say, well, no, he was a pastor, he believed in God, that kind of thing. But from what I could perceive from the greater consciousness and from the interview, especially one of the interviews where somebody was very close to him, they were saying if you really spoke to him, you would think that he might not even believe in some of the things that he was preaching that were Christian, because he was beginning to learn about other, spirituality. So once I saw that, I perceived something from the greater consciousness, and what they were telling me is that he was, you know, he was actually perceiving that spirituality was more than Christianity, and through perceiving that, um, it was the direction that he should have gone into. If he'd have gone in that direction, he would have knew about etymology, and that's one of the proofs that I have that what I was perceiving was correct. Because once you start to let go of Christianity and you start to perceive spirituality, then it um, evokes etymology, because you understand how much words are spells. And so when I was coming on this morning, I was going to do this whole video about peace and freedom, and how you shouldn't ask for peace and you shouldn't ask for freedom. Because peace is to ask for silence in a world full of sound, and sounds make light, and we are all light beings. And to ask for peace would be like asking for death, because that's when you will get peace, when there's no action, when there's no sound. And if you ask for freedom, we choose our obligations. So asking for freedom, so asking for freedom is not the same as asking to be unenslaved or unoppressed. And so what happens is lots of Christians do die by hands of satanic beings, which Martin Luther King definitely did, because he was killed by either the FBI or the CIA, we don't know. But we do know that he was evil. So being in that space where you are in the Ark of the Covenant, and what the Ark of the Covenant is, Ark is something that is rounded. When you have something that is rounded, it is less penetrable, because you have less points for demons to get through. It's a spiritual term. When you are in the Ark of the Covenant, most people think that they have all these thoughts about how it being dangerous and those kind of things. It can be dangerous to be in the Ark, because being in the Ark of the Covenant is in a state where you have so much more perception of the consciousness. And when you have that perception, the thing about that is to vibrate against what is evil. So when you're vibrating what is evil, evil will vibrate against you. And what is evil is what is ruthless. So you can't, I learned a long time ago that even though Christianity, the Bible and the scripts have so much power, but Christianity does not, because most people, and then most pastors who are Christian, they make all of this money to misinterpret what is there. Most of what the pastors are preaching is a misinterpretation. And what they are doing is they are preaching people into enslavement and oppression. And the way they do that is by, one of the ways they do that is one of the things that bothers me the most, is by telling people that it's the worst in society that are used by the God that they say is a God. So to say that someone is a murderer or a rapist, or some man was going to literally murder his child on a mountain because some being that he's never seen said so, because he had faith, and then he was rewarded for almost doing that, made absolutely no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense to me to perceive women as the lesser being. So those things that preachers do cultivate spells that are degrading, that are enslaving and oppressive. And that is why they provoke so much war. Because if you notice, the Muslims, the Christians, the Jews, they've been at war for centuries in different places. And they tend to stay at war. And then you got all these people in the government that claim to be Christians, and then they provoke wars, and they are so absolutely ruthless and evil. So the thing about it is, dropping that religiosity in choosing and perceiving and cultivating spirituality is very different from religion. And that's what Martin Luther King was doing at some of the time. But what the greater consciousness was having me to perceive is, Christianity, though, was a platform. And so, yes, although he was perceiving spirituality, Christianity was the platform to which that had ushered in so much fellowship and worship. And when I say worship, I mean the man and the man's, what's the word? His goals. Because when you worship, that is not, you can worship anything. Anything can be your God. So it's not to say that he was an idol, but it is to say that he was a chosen king. I mean, he was a chosen God, which made him a king. And yes, I know his name is King, but in that he also was a king because he was also a chosen God. So, because, the reason why I was pondering Martin Luther King was because I was pondering both he and Mandela and wondering, why, if they seem to be in the Ark of the Covenant, if they seem to be so perceptive, why did they die? And then I started understanding a lot about the Ark of the Covenant and about what happens if you are in the Ark of the Covenant. You can't go work for the devil. And it's very important, if you're vibrating against evil in any way, where evil is attacking you, that you don't support or cultivate support for what goes against you, for the evil that goes against you. So even though it's going to be controversial to some of you, what I was being taught was that Martin Luther King, I'm going to say Martin, because at this point it's kind of weird just saying the whole name. I'm going to say that Martin didn't keep cultivating that spirituality in a way that influenced the spirituality needed for people to come out of the oppression and enslavement that they were in at the time. And then you notice that he was murdered by evil. And then once he was murdered by the evil that came up against people being unenslaved and unoppressed, the movement kind of failed. I mean, not only did they murder him, they murdered the black people in the Black Panthers, and then they turned around and they murdered Martin Luther King. I mean, and then they murdered Malcolm X also. Each of which was coming out of a platform of religion. You know, they were very religious based, all of them. And so I was, you know, and then even Mandela, what I wondered about with him was when he came out of prison, he was 27 years in prison. And then he became the president of South Africa. But what he did as president, and not to say that I don't like the man, was he managed white people's business. Okay, he managed lighter hued people's business. And it wasn't until 2 or 3 presidents later when they got that president that had them move all those lighter hued people off their land and out of their houses. And the country was turned completely back. You know, the country started to be the South Africa that we see it becoming now. So what the greater consciousness was showing to me was that the way that to understand it is to understand. I mean, like I said, one of my proofs was that the etymology. You know, when I started to perceive spirituality and cultivate it, it was so important to me to use correct etymology, because etymology is spells. It is influence. Spells are influence. And so you want, you know, in him and Martin walking around being influential in speaking the Bible, didn't speak the spirituality of the alchemy of the sacred text. And so it was continuously influencing what was coming up against him, because there's plenty of people in the government that's evil, that claim to be Christian. And I'm sure we can all see and perceive it daily. And then then when Mandela came out of prison, first thing he did was forgive everyone. He started preaching to forgive everyone. And that is not the sacred text. In the sacred text, you don't forgive. You could connect people back to their good spirits, but you don't forgive. Though people change, you don't forgive the unforgivable, especially. But people change, and then you don't have to forgive them. And so, like I said, I will have a video about that particular part of the sacred text. I'm looking for it still in the sacred text so I can do a video about it. So coming out of prison, 27 years, and then forgiving those who put him there is not even a good message for the people. Because it wasn't forgiveness that moved those lighter hued people off that land in South Africa. And it wasn't forgiveness that had the people in the Haitian Revolution stand up and take over that island. And it wasn't forgiveness that's evoked a lot of revolutions. So forgiveness is not the key. But Martin was preaching forgiveness. And he was preaching Christianity, something given by the very oppressors that he was trying to go up against. And even Islam is misinterpreted sacred text. It's not the spirituality. And in order to have these revolutions, you have to connect to the revolutionary. And yes, the revolutionary is Jesus. But if you don't know that, if you think that Jesus is only about speaking words into the consciousness, and he is not an actuated revolutionary, and he is not the revolution, then you don't understand Jesus. Because if there was real power in just saying the words, plenty of people would speak the words and not be evil anymore. And there's plenty of evil that speak the words and are very evil, because Jesus is an action. Jesus is a revolution. So the sacred text, it is an Egyptian book. Um, Not all sacred text is Egyptian book, but the Bible, is sacred text in some ways, but it's not sacred text in the misinterpretations. And the original book is Egyptian. It is an Egyptian book about Egyptian people. And so those people who call themselves Jews are not the actual Jews. They are not praying for the world. Prayer is an action. And so many of their actions are not for the world. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody who calls himself a Jew is evil. But it does mean that they are not the real Jews. They are not the ones who pray for the world. And they have no real understanding of the sacred text. And so to get back around to what I was originally projecting as all of it is the message. So I'm not going to say that no part of this isn't a message. But be careful of the spells you speak. You don't want peace in a world full of sound. Unless you want peace to someone who's evil. Because there's plenty of evil that I would like to have. I would like for them to have peace. And be careful with the chant of freedom. Because I don't want to be oppressed and I don't want to be enslaved. But I know sometimes freedom is just like Khalil Gibran expressed. It's a golden chain that we wear around our necks sometimes. It's a golden chain that some people wear around their necks. It's not one that I wear around mine. So, after this, I'm going to start. I'm probably going to eat, but after this, I'm going to do chapter 37 in Genesis, and then there's a few videos that I will probably be redoing. And I like it sometimes to redo the chapter because once I do the chapter, I notice that I do it, and then when I go back and redo it, I interpret so much more because it becomes dimensional. So of course, there will be a few videos that I will do again. But for now, just that is something that I was interpreting in the consciousness. I was watching. I'm going to start watching things about Black History Month in a moment. I already know. And that's something that came to mind. Because I was really wondering about that. Because people, one of the things that I heard recently was the pastor saying that Jesus had to die, which is so not real. Please, please stop believing these people who are just taking your money and telling you the wrong thing, the wrong messages. That Jesus was supposed to die. No revolution is supposed to die if it comes from love. The death is not what makes the revolution. The revolution living is what makes the revolution. So please understand that Jesus is not supposed to die at the cross. So my family, I adore you. I adore you all. I have a great family. They are gorgeousness in its consciousness, and their vibrations are so great. And to all beings in the consciousness, to the gorgeous sun, I know you're gorgeous because the earth is gorgeous. To the gorgeous earth, I know you're gorgeous because I can see you. Thank you for keeping me alive and for having me to perceive you. And for speaking, I adored. And for every star, I adore you who told me who I am. For all the stars that speak, to all the stars that help me, I adore you so much for telling me who I am. And every being, every compassionate, gorgeous, compassionate being in this consciousness who has helped me, and my son who has kept us alive and who has given me the knowledge and the energy and the love and any concern. I adore you and I thank you. I am grateful. Love you all. See you later.